Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Africa in Focus with myself, Kwame, Ghanaian writer, broadcaster, journalist, historian, podcaster, and entrepreneur. And in this week's edition of Africa in Focus, it's a special Why Africans in the UK Must Leave the UK. Yeah, that's the theme for this week's show. Why Africans in the UK Must Leave the UK. This was prompted by a comment I heard from one Ghanaian actress called Michaela Cole, who said that West Africans are increasingly choosing to leave the UK because the UK is no longer attractive, and she personally feels more at peace in Ghana. So we're going to get into it deeply as to why Africans in the UK must leave the UK. All right, so before we get into the podcast, if you like what you hear, please share with your friends, your family, social media networks. Subscribe to Ghana African Focus on YouTube. Hit the notification bell, and YouTube will notify you every time we upload a new podcast. All right. Also, we're on Spotify. Look out for Ghana African Focus on Spotify. Hit the follow button, meaning that Spotify will notify you every time we upload a new podcast. Okay, and we're also on all the other main platform providers. So wherever you get your podcast from, we're on there. Just look out for Ghana African Focus, okay? And if you'd like to donate to the show to help us produce some more great content coming from Ghana and the African world, then please donate. You can donate as little as $3 a month. You can either do it as a one-off payment or you can do it as a monthly subscription. So I'll leave you the link as to how you can donate in the fullness to the show. All right, so today we're stepping into a conversation that many Africans in the UK whisper privately, but almost nobody says in public. Now, did you know? Because the UK is touted as UK, yeah, UK. You know, Ghanaians in Ghana, you know, over Nigerians, particularly also Kenyans, they see the UK as this kind of you know, even mother country, yeah, because of the colonial legacy and what have you. You know, they hear stuff about London and this and that, right? But UK is nothing. UK is nothing to write home about now. But we'll get into that in a bit more detail. But did you know that over 300,000 people left the UK last year? Some of them Africans. So they left the UK last year, meaning that they didn't move house. They've not moved to other cities in the UK. They've actually left the UK for good and not coming back. And now, after a Ghanaian actress probably said that Africans should leave the UK because the environment is deteriorating, etc., we pose the question today. Should Africans in the UK start planning their exit? Or should they stay in a burning house? The reality is, UK house is on fire. It's a burning house. So are Africans going to stay in the burning house and burn to death, literally, or metaphorically speaking, or are they going to leave the burning house? So this episode is not emotional. It's not reactionary. It's not fear-mongering. It's about strategic analysis. And you know, on this program, we have to give you in-depth strategic analysis. All right, so let's move on. So let's look at segment one. The UK is changing and not for the better. So, you know, UK today, yeah, so this is to Africans in the UK and also Africans who are listening outside in the continent, yeah. The UK today is not the UK many Africans migrated to 10, 15, 20 years ago. The country, believe it or not, because you don't hear this in your media in Ghana or Nigeria or wherever, but the UK is in a structural decline. The NHS, that was once touted as the envy of the world, is now in decline. Yeah, waiting lists are record highs. So people are waiting even up to 5 years for operation. Yeah. GP appointments are impossible to get. Schools overcrowded. You thought schools in Africa were overcrowded? No. That happened in Britain as well. Schools overcrowded in Britain. Another thing that will shock you, UK roads full of potholes. Yeah, I've been up and down the country, Manchester, London, Birmingham, Hull, Leeds, Liverpool, potholes, potholes. So we don't have just potholes in Ghana or Nigeria, there's potholes in UK roads. Yeah. Public transport at times can be unreliable. So trains, buses. Yeah. Council services are collapsing before our very eyes. So even the bins that people used to collect, I mean, there was a bin strike in Birmingham. For 1 year, the council in Birmingham didn't collect the bin. Yeah. And it's stinking and, oh no, right? And that's the tip of the iceberg. And I believe it's just be resolved. Yeah. So council services are collapsing. Libraries, social services, children's services, you know, they've shut down all the youth clubs. So, you know, and to add to that, inflation is eating salaries alive, literally. People get paid, people are bitching, people in the UK are actually living basically, literally, hand to mouth. Yeah. Paycheck to paycheck. Because the money that they get, yeah, is not enough to live, particularly rents. Rents have actually doubled or tripled since COVID. Yeah. So UK is not an attractive proposition now. Yeah. And many of you who live in Africa, we're going to break it down today so that you know that the UK is not an attractive place as you think it is. So you add to what I've just said, add to that the cost of living. Yeah. And this is not a crisis anymore. Yeah. So you've had a cost of living crisis in the UK basically for 4 years now. We're into its 5th year now. Yeah. So this is not a crisis anymore. It's a permanent condition. This is permanent, beloved. Food prices up. Energy bills, energy, your light, your gas, your heating has doubled, if not tripled, since the Russia-Ukraine war. Council tax, yeah, is rising every year. Yeah. Wages literally have frozen. So basically since 2008, a lot of people in the UK have not had a decent pay rise, particularly in the public sector. Well, outside of doctors and nurses. Yeah. So for many Africans in the UK is no longer a place of opportunity. Instead, it's become a place of survival. If that. And there's many Africans in London, right, who are working 3-4 jobs a day just to survive in London. So Africans are not thriving in London, they're actually surviving. Yeah. So let's move on now to a big issue that compels the actually living in Britain, right? Or UK, and that's the rent crisis. Yeah. So places like London have become unlivable. Yeah. So let's talk rent. London is now one of the most expensive cities on earth. Average rent in London, and we're not talking a mansion, we're talking about a 2-bedroom house, 3-bedroom house in London. Average rent in London is £2,200. Think about it now. So if you earn £4,000 in London after tax, which is very, very good salary, that's more than national wage. Right? Half your money is going to go on rent. Yeah? And even in some cases, right, half your money is going to rent, in particular in London. That's why African people in London have got to have 3, 4, even sometimes 5 jobs just to make the ends meet in living in London. Outside of London, rent can vary between £1,000 and £1,400 a month. Yeah? And add to this, Africans often support family members back home, yeah, and pay UK rent. So, situation for most Africans, particularly in London, is that you're paying UK rent, you're paying UK bills, i.e. your internet, your phone, your light, gas, etc. You're paying UK taxes and UK transport, and at the same time, you are sending remittances to Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa, etc. So you're working to survive here, and you're working to support home. This is economic suffocation. Yeah. And now the worst part, yeah, many Africans, right, who are doing this, right, particularly in London, right, they're not building any wealth. They're not building any wealth because all their money is on bills, the church, and sending money back home. So a lot of Africans are not saving. In actual fact, many Africans are taking loans, taking loans just to send even money back home. Africans are not building assets. Yeah. So if you're on a mortgage, right, you haven't bought the house outright, you're paying the mortgage, tied down 20, 25 years. So you're not building any assets. And more importantly, you are not building a future in the UK. You are just coping. You're just surviving. Is that the life you want to live? That is the life most Africans are living today. And don't let no one fool you when they come home on a holiday, right? Wearing their designer clothes, and they got the latest Apple iPhone and what have you, right? All that's on credit. Credit system is not working in the UK. It's not working too much in Ghana, Nigeria, etc., right? But credit is big time in places like UK, US, Canada, yeah? And many of the Africans that come on holiday, right? All of them, yeah, on credit, yeah? That's why they can buy latest clothes. That's why they can buy, iPhone 18 or 17 or whatever. That's why they can buy latest Samsung phone. And you think they're living well. No, they're not living well. They're actually struggling to make ends meet, but they're buying that stuff on credit. So they're just coping mechanism. So let's move on to the biggest indictment of living in the UK. While many Africans potentially cannot leave Britain, is the peasant trap. That is a silent crisis that many people are not aware of and don't talk about. So this is the part that will hit Africans the hardest, right? The pension. You only get a full pension in the UK if you have worked in the UK for 35 years. 35. But many Africans, particularly the new wave, have come between 2005 and 2015. So that's not even 20 years. Yeah? So let's do the math. If you arrived in the UK at 40, you must look into 75 to qualify for a full state UK pension. Yeah? If you're 35, yeah, you come out in your early 30s or mid 30s, right? You got to work another 35 years to qualify for a pension until you're 70. The retirement age right now is 68, but it's rising. Yeah? And now add to that the stress of living in the UK, the burnout of 3, 4 jobs, particularly in London, chronic illnesses. Believe it or not, most Africans living in the UK are sick people, sick. Most of them are taking pills and tablets just to survive, just to be sane. Yeah? Obviously, add to that, white racism, the bigoted, anti-black attitudes of white people, not just white people, but Asian people, Chinese people, Arab people towards African people. So it creates a toxic atmosphere. There's also workplace discrimination. Many Africans living on the continent don't understand, they understand that Africans in the UK suffer from workplace discrimination. Yeah, many of them have got masters, but they're working in undervalued jobs. Yeah. And all that, yeah, compounds your mental health. Because if you're living in a toxic society environment, yeah, if you got burnout, if you're suffering from racism every day, white racism, all that has a strain on your mental health. So many Africans will never receive a full pension. Because, like I said, if you're 40, you come into the UK when you're 40, you got to work at least about 30 to 35 years before you qualify for a state pension. In actual fact, the reality is many Africans would die before they get to that retirement age. Yeah? Many will retire into poverty because they've got no savings, no assets, no capital, because you're paying your bills, you're getting salary back from meager, but you're also paying church tithes and sending money back home. And this is the peasant trap, yeah, which is a system designed for people who were born here, not for so-called immigrants, yeah? And this system, is basically a trap because it entraps you to work for 30, 40 years, yeah, thinking that you're going to get a state pension when every year the state pension age is rising. It's now 67, 68. Maybe a couple of years' time, you'll be 70, 75. So if you're as African, right, you come in, you're 35, 40. Are you really going to work to 75 years old just to get a full a state pension? Hmm? So Africans, long term, are the ones who will pay the price for all this. And like I said, many of them will not even live to see their retirement. That's sad, but it's true. Many Africans are dying, particularly during the COVID era. COVID took out a lot of Africans, and many Africans are on pills and medication. So, moving on. Let's talk about the psychological toll. Yeah, let's talk about the emotional side. So, Africans in the UK face constant racial profiling, particularly in London by the police. Constant microaggressions from white people. Immigration anxiety, particularly if you have not, got your papers. Yeah, you're always, thinking that if the immigration services are going to come for you, because right now in this country, in the UK, there's a political hot potato about immigration and mass immigration, and how that's wiped out a lot of jobs that many white people are doing. So now there's a lot of anti-immigration stance. And if you African, you've been here 5, 10 years, you haven't got full citizenship yet, you're always going to be on your back, looking, in case an immigration officer stops you in the street. Yeah, we've seen it with ICE in America. Yeah, where they stopped so-called immigrants in the street and they've killed some of them. Yeah. Also, there's visa stress. Yeah, because every single year they change the immigration rules in this country. So immigration rules now is not what it was 5 years ago. And immigration rules now is not going to be like in 5 years' time. Every single year, they're making it harder and harder and harder for you to come into this country, let alone bring your family. Yeah. So this visa issue, right, is a massive, massive issue. Yeah. For many Africans living in the UK. And also because of the current climate, like I said, this anti-immigration stance taken by people like Reform UK, who have won massively in this week's council elections in the UK. Yeah, won big time. Yeah. So now that's going to be used up by Reform UK to whip up anti-immigrant sentiment. Yeah. So you're as already, it's hard to get a job as an immigrant now, but you're now feeling other pressure because of the likes of Reform UK, who are using anti-immigrant propaganda to rip up, hate, that white people got for, immigrants, who this is immigrants. Now, also, you're being overqualified and underpaid. I know many Africans who have got masters, degrees, but working at KFC, working at McDonald's, working in factory, working in, picking fruit in the farms. Yeah, and you're getting minimum wage. You're not getting big salary. You're getting about £10 an hour, £12 an hour. What's that? Particularly if you got rent to pay, your rent. Yeah, if you work 40 hours a week, or let's say 50 hours a week, and you get paid £12 an hour, that's, let's say £12 an hour. Yeah, that's £600 a week. Then forget taxes, not insurance. So you probably get £450, maybe, yeah, let's say £450 a week. Yeah. What about your rent? Yeah, how much is your rent? £200 a week? £150 a week? More than that, particularly in London. So many Africans today are overqualified, but doing work that is not, tying with the qualifications. They do menial work, most Africans, and particularly in the care sector, where many of our African women are working. The care sector is very, very undervalued and underpaid. Yeah. And that itself brings it stress. And that, again, makes one feel exhausted by the daily grind. So if you're working in a factory, you're working in a care home, you're working 10, 12 hours a day, beloved, a day. That's half the day. And then you go home exhausted. And then you got to pay your bills. You got to, cook. You got to do your shopping. You got to do all things right in the 12 hours that you've got. So it makes a lot of African people feel stressed and feel tired. And add to that the pressure of sending money back home, because many Africans in Africa don't know how bad the UK is. They think UK, you come to the UK, you've made it. No, we've got to tell the truth. You don't make it in the UK. Africans are suffering. They're suffering, but they won't tell you they're suffering. Even to send £100 to you lot in Africa, they're suffering. Yeah. So they're exhausted. They are tired. Yeah. And this can lead down to mental breakdown if not careful. And so, when many Africans look at the life that they're living right now, particularly in London, they ask themselves, is this what I really came here for? Is this what I left Africa for, to come here? You came for opportunity. You came for stability. You came for a better life. However, the UK is giving you the opposite of that. The UK is giving you stress, bills and more bills, burnout, no wealth, no rest, and no future. At some point, the maths stops adding up. Yeah. So now, there's a phenomenon. We move on to the next section. There's a phenomena of Africans leaving quietly. So with all this hype about immigration into the UK, yeah, many Africans are beginning to leave the UK, just like in America, because of Trump's racist policies like scrapping diversity, equality, and inclusion services in America and cutting down the black funding for universities and what have you. Many African Americans, those who can afford it, are leaving America. Same in Britain, the UK. A lot of Africans are beginning to leave the UK. Why? Why? Because of what I said above. And also, where are they going? So if they're leaving the UK, where are they going? Well, believe it or not, many Africans are going back home to Ghana, to Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa. Some are going to United Arab Emirates, like Dubai. Some are going to Canada, Portugal, and also where they can work remotely. Why is that? Well, because they live in the UK because there's low cost of living in other countries, like Portugal, yeah, like Ghana, particularly if you've got a remote job, etc. Right? There's more dignity. Yeah, there's more of a community. So in the UK, everyone is the individual, they live their life. Right? But in Africa, particularly in African continent, there's more of a community. Yeah, Ubuntu. I have to say in South Africa, Ubuntu. Yeah, there's more of a community collective, not this individual selfish lifestyle you get in the UK, US, Canada. There's more opportunity, believe it or not, if you're a skilled worker in the African continent to build wealth than there is in the UK. Because in the UK and the US and Canada, right, and a lot of Western countries, most of your income is going to pay bills and service your debt from credit card and car finance and what have you. So, there is an opportunity to build wealth, save and build wealth. But in Africa, if you're a skilled worker and you've got a decent job that pays you very, very well, you can then have the opportunity to slowly but surely build wealth and acquire assets. Something you can't do in the UK. And also, you've got the work-life balance. In the UK, people live to work. Think about it, you live to work. You don't work to live, you actually live to work. Think about it now. So many people in the UK have got a poor quality of life. Yeah. Even when they're sick, they're compelled to work because they know that if they take a day or two off work, right, they won't get paid for it. So many people are compelled to work in the UK even when they're sick. So that itself presents you a poor quality of life. Yeah. However, if you live outside the UK, you have more time to live and you've got a decent work-life balance. So let's break down what the Ghanaian actress said about life in the UK. So this Ghanaian actress, her name is Michaela Cole. She's a Ghanaian British actress. And she said, West Africans are increasingly choosing to leave the UK because it, i.e. the UK, is no longer attractive, and she personally feels more at peace in Ghana. Check that now. This is a Ghanaian British woman born in UK, yeah, or raised in the UK, who is now saying that West Africans, i.e. Ghanaians, Nigerians, etc., are leaving the UK because the UK is no longer an attractive proposition. And she personally feels at home in Ghana. Yeah? So added to that message, she also said that the environment is deteriorating, schools are failing, hospitals are overwhelmed, roads are collapsing, cost of living, particularly in London, is unbearable. The country is no longer offers a future. And that's why at least 300,000 million white people left the UK last year. Yeah? So whether you agree or disagree, her message resonates with many Africans because it reflects a lived reality. Africans are tired. They're tired of struggling. They're tired of surviving. They're tired of living from paycheck to paycheck. They're tired of pretending that everything is fine when it's not. They're actually hurting inside. And that's the reality facing many Africans today. Even those Africans who are working in the City of London, live in London, work in the City of London, the financial heartbeat of this country, and earn even £120,000. That is nothing, beloved. £120,000 is nothing in London. It may be something elsewhere, like Manchester, Nottingham, Leicester, Bristol. But in London, 120K is nothing, beloved. I know African people on six-figure salary in London who are struggling. Why? Because of the rent and the cost of living in London. Yeah? So, should Africans leave the UK? Here's the truth. So, I personally, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to tell you whether to leave, but I think you should leave. I myself am preparing to leave in the next couple of years. But what I would tell you is to think strategically. Yeah? Think analytically as African living in the UK. If you want wealth, the UK is no longer the place. It was 15, 20 years ago, definitely not today. If you want quality of life, the UK is declining. If you want retirement security, the pension system is stacked against you in the UK. If you want mental peace, the UK is becoming hostile, particularly with this, this anti-immigrant environment. UK is definitely becoming hostile. So, if you want stability, safety, predictable systems, structured institutions, the UK offers that, but the question is not, should Africans leave the UK? The question is, what future are you trying to build for you and your family? And can the UK realistically give that to you? Because like I said, the UK in 2026 is not the UK it was 20 years ago. Yeah? It is a totally different society now in the UK. And so in closing, family, this episode is not about fear. It's not about panic. It's about clarity. It's about critical analysis. It's about structural analysis, yeah? The UK is changing, and changing for the worse, for me, not for the better. As evident by more than 300,000 white people who left the UK last year. The world is changing, and Africans must begin to think strategically, not emotionally. Migration is not a fairy tale. It is a circulation. And if the numbers no longer add up, you must be brave enough to admit that and rethink the question or rethink the equation. Yeah? And so I thank you for listening to this special edition of Africa in Focus with myself, Kwame, Ghanaian writer, broadcaster, journalist, podcaster. Until next time, stay sharp, stay focused, stay aware, and stay intentional. For myself, Kwame, and from all the crew here on Africa in Focus, thank you for listening, and we see you in the next edition of Ghana, Africa in Focus.